In our previous videos, we've created a simple Android app with AppInventor where we can add a shortcut to a list and then we can show all shortcuts. And when we click on show all shortcuts, it's going to iterate over the list and show us all shortcuts and notifications. In this video, we are going to explore selection. So selection is where we want to make a decision and then do some behavior based on the outcome of that decision. We're going to use the control and logic elements here. Now, what we're going to do is I always start classes by asking students to give me their favorite keyboard shortcuts because it's a metaphor for training. We learn from each other. We learn ways to be more productive and effective by learning from each other. And hearing everybody say their favorite shortcut is a good way to learn from each other. Now, every time I do this, somebody will say Control-C and Control-V. There are some shortcuts that are very unique, but Control-C, Control-V, those are both, those are things that I know I'm going to hear at least once when I ask for shortcuts. So what we're going to do is we're going to add an if test to our first button click, where if the text that the user enters contains Control-C or Control-V, we're going to, instead of saying just saved, we're going to say something like, wow, I saw that coming, or that's a very good shortcut, or something like that. So what we're going to do then is I'm going to do a little bit of what we're going to call refactoring here. We're going to make a new local variable. Now remember, global variable is one where we will share the variable across different scopes. And by scope, I mean this is a scope. The button one click handler is a scope. The button two click handler is a scope. If we want something to be shared between those two scopes, we need to make a global variable. In this case, we just need a local variable. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the text that is in the text box and I'm going to save that into a local variable, which means it's only alive within this scope, within this button click handler. Now, why do we want to make a local variable? Why not make them all global? Well, one is memory. Memory allocation, that variable will basically be cleaned up when this event handler is over. It'll be taken out of memory, where global variables are always in memory. Another thing is, honestly, just documentation. If everything were global, it would get really hard to read because you'd have dozens and dozens of variables. They'd be accessed at different places. So scope is something we want to pay close attention to. Only make a variable global if you know it's going to be used across different scopes. If not, make it local. So anyway, with that said, I'm going to initialize, let's see, we're going to initialize local name. Okay, we'll drag this guy up to text box 1. Okay. And now what I'll do is I will take the steps that are going to use this variable, and I'm going to simply nest them inside like so. There we go. Okay. Now you see I moved this text box 1 text from here up to here. So I now have an empty puzzle piece here that I need to fill in. But additionally, my variable name is currently name, which is confusing. Let's give the variable something, a better name. We'll say initialize hint. There we go, local variable called hint to the text in the text box 1. Now, just so we can remember, what is that? That's the text that the user types in here. This widget at the very top of the screen is text box 1. So when we see text box 1.text, we're pointing to this guy right here. So we're storing that into a local variable named hint. Now, what if I want to access this local variable named hint? I'm going to drag this get hint and boom, there we go. So what we've done so far, we would not notice any behavioral changes in our application yet. It's doing the same thing. It's just doing that thing in one additional step so that we can take the text that the user enters and we can store it in this variable. And why do we want to do that? We want to do that so that we can put an if test around it. So let's make the if test, and I'm going to make myself a little bit more room. I'm starting to get a little crowded here. So let's make that if test. I'm going to go to logic, and I'm going to say, actually I'm going to go to control, sorry, and I'm going to say if the we'll go with an if then. So we'll take this guy and I'm trying to put them between these two right here. So if I just set it right there and drop, there we go. If, okay, now if what? If the hint contains Control C, then I want to show a message. Now the trick is, how do we know if the variable hint contains the word Control C? Well, we're going to want to go to the text block here, and let's get the contains piece. Okay, so if hint, let's grab hint again. If get hint, there we go. And then piece, that's what we are inspecting. It's kind of hard to explain, but hint is the text that the user entered, and piece is a word or a phrase that we're looking for inside of that text. So for piece, I can just put in kind of a literal text block here, and we saw this guy before. We used it right down here when we were resetting our text field to empty string. So let me grab the literal text box, and we'll say if it contains Control V, or I think we said C. If the text contains Control C, then we're going to take this action. Okay, what action are we going to take? Well, we want to show a notification. I'm going to copy the notification that we already have. We know that works, the one that shows saved. I'm going to snap it right in here. And instead of saying saved, I'm going to change this to say that's a common shortcut. Or that's a popular shortcut, maybe something like that. Okay, so if the text that the user enters contains the phrase Control C, then we're going to show a notification that says that's a common shortcut. We're only going to show it if that text contains Control C. And I'll give myself a little more room. Okay, and we're going to try this guy out. So I'm going to save and redeploy. The application has deployed now. Let's take a look at how it works. If I type in Control C, and we have to be very careful, spelling, capitalization, spaces all matter. We can add more string functions to that to make it easier on the user, but at the moment we just have to make sure it's exact. I choose Add Shortcut and take a look. That's a common shortcut followed by saved. Okay, now let's try another one, Control V. This time we should notice that it doesn't say that's a common shortcut, because remember, our test here is just looking for Control C. So I say Add Shortcut, and we see it simply says saved. So that's a very simple if test. I'm going to make a part 2 of this video where we're going to do a few more things. First of all, we're going to add an else. In other words, we're going to make it so that saved does not show up if the user enters Control C. It only shows up if the user does not enter Control C. So essentially, instead of just an if then, we're going to make this an if then else. Additionally, I'm going to change the test here to include both Control C and Control V. So we'll take a look at that in our next video. Thank you.